have you turned the corner as a listener? As a business owner, have you turned the corner? As an employer, have you turned the corner? As
are you seeing signs of recovery?
As a worker, wonderful. The reason it's an important question is that Godfred and Sky and Nathan, July is a very important time. July 1, 2022 was when the president directed the finance minister to go for an IMF program.
Okay.
July 31, 2023 is when he read his midterm budget. So it's a year and 1 month since he was directed to go. July was also the period of the beginning of the unraveling of everything that the government had said it had done.
Okay.
So in July, you have the CD trading around 6 to the dollar. The dollar trading around 6 to the the dollar could be bought for 6.
Yes.
It went to 8, and by November it was around 15. So the unraveling began. Inflation moved from the 20s to the 50s.
50s, yes.
Okay. Reserves eroded. The major economic indicators all went south from today's a year ago today. All right. So if on 31st July 2023, the Minister of Finance comes and says, we have turned the corner, is he saying that from the context of the economic managers or from the economic agents? Right? Because, so that's why I've asked the question. People who run companies, people who do business, those who produce goods, those who sell, are you seeing a corner being turned? The macro figures themselves don't point, in my view, to a serious corner being turned. Because, for example, inflation eased from January, but it started picking up slightly again. Currency depreciation has stabilized, but some people say the reason for that is because we are not making payments. We've accumulated 20% increase in our debt from end of last year to now. So okay. I'm not really sure what he means when he says that we have turned the corner. But I stand to be corrected. So let's hear from people first, and then we'll do some economics and analysis as well. Then the second point is about the central bank and the losses they incurred and what that says about the way they are also managing the monetary policy, whether it's their policy decisions that should be blamed or just the general economic environment, or whether we can delineate the fiscal managers from the monetary managers. So all of those questions are fair questions for the morning. So we'll take your comments. Have you turned an economic corner yet? Or when do you expect to turn the corner if you have not? And those who have turned the corner, when did it start turning? We want to know. And we'll deal with that on a factual basis. But Nathan wants to tell you about Sukasa. Tell me about Sukasa.
Yes, Sukasa, they've got the Ograntin Communities Affordable Luxury Project, 3-bedroom unit with an outhouse and a 4-bedroom unit with an outhouse. And you can even pay a CD equivalent. So get in touch with Sukasa. They've got projects currently at East Legon Hills and Ayi Mensa. Call them on 030-296-0865 or send a WhatsApp message on 055-369-7886 or send an email info@sukasa.com.gh. Sukasa, building on trust. Now, in life, you always have to insist on the best, and when you find it, stick to it. Bell Pack paper tissue is one of the best things in life. Bell Pack has tea rolls that are soft but not weak, strong but not hard, just perfect. Bell Pack tea roll is smooth and gentle on the skin, and the same goes for Bell Pack kitchen towel. Cleans in one wipe, one Bell Pack lasts long and saves you money. If you want to be a distributor, call 0551-144-400. Bell Pack is another quality product from Belacqua. Now, if payments are your thing, then you need to switch to MasterCard. For the laundry drop-off, grocery pickup, lunch sit-down or tank fill-up, always use MasterCard. I switch from cash to card for all my payments with MasterCard.
MOB, money for bridges. MOB, McDonald's for Burger King, and spend the rest of your life trying to lose digits. Okay.
The economy is in a very difficult situation, and I think that the yesterday when I interviewed Monacote, Abna Osei and Adobia Isiama Boaji of AGI, I got a sense of the feeling of three different people on the economy. The government obviously feels like things are much better today than they were within those 4 months. All right. And I need to say that in those 4 months between July, August, September, October 2022, things went really, really bad. So if you are comparing today to that time, things have improved. Do you get my logic? Because the rate at which the currency was falling, almost like a CD a week. Do you get me? It was losing value like a CD a week. That was just crazy. You remember there were days that you call your banker and you say you want to do something. You say, the thing you want to buy is 8 CDs. The next day is 9. The next day is 10. It went that way all the way through. So that and inflation, all those things, clearly it was a crazy period. Now, if you compare what we are going through today to that time, you can say things have stabilized. But I'm not really sure you can say we've turned the corner, because turn the corner is when you are talking about recovery. Recovery. See, and a recovery, I mean, we are still inviting people.
Is it too early to expect a recovery?
Yes, you are inviting people to come for more debt exchange. You haven't even finished the debt exchange, which has imposed untold hardship on people. Many people feel like your expenditure cuts have not been enough. Yes, okay, so two things. The government's expenditure target has reduced by 20 billion. But the original expenditure they wanted to spend when they announced in November was way too high for a country that was going to austerity anyway. Do you get it? So you can't really see the commitment to cutting, because as I said, there are three things. You do a debt treatment, you do a fiscal adjustment, and then you do a structural adjustment. The debt treatment, you talk to people who have lent you money, and then you tell them, and the people who have lent you money are two categories: domestic people and foreign people. The domestic people include the banks, include bondholders, include pension funds, and include the central bank. So you've given everybody a level of debt treatment. So the IPPs and the, what do you call them? So there are two groups. The pension funds are the ones who have not yet been put fully on the debt exchange. All right. And you've made some savings there, which would have been money you spent on interest. So yes, we admit that. You haven't even finished negotiating the details of your foreign debt exchange or debt restructuring, because you're talking about not just multilateral and bilateral creditors, but the Euro bond holders and all those things. We've not finished the details of that. All right. People have been invited for a pensioner debt exchange. That's not done. IPPs have not fully been dealt with. All right. Then we haven't fully come to terms with government cuts, because government expenditure is still considered high. All right. Yet the government says they've turned the corner. So for me, I don't know whether they're saying we've turned the corner because last year by this time things were so bad that because things have stabilized, we've turned the corner. But I'm thinking that when you say you've turned the corner, I'm talking about recovery. All right. Your debt is still going up. You are still borrowing a lot of money from the treasury bill market. All right. Then you have your central bank itself. All right. The banks took massive haircuts. Banks lent you money. You redefined the payment. It's almost like you are changing the rules of the game in the middle of it. So I'm going to pay you longer tenor, a lower interest. Okay. Then the central bank didn't go through Parliament and give you money. And now you've written off half of that money without parliamentary approval. All right. So that we are in an era of what is called fiscal dominance. The fiscal side of things is overshadowing everything. You know, so I struggle to see how you can say you've turned the corner based on the question you asked me. You know, I get it when economic managers try to be positive, where they say don't talk down the economy, so they sort of send a signal to the market and that type of thing. But we are in the middle of an IMF program, which we jointly prepared with them, the PCPEG, which has specific benchmarks that we have to meet. So to the extent that the first round review in June came and we got a 600 million, so you could say that we are on the path to recovery. We are on the path to recovery. Even by our own admission, our debt will come to sustainable levels in 2028. So if your debt is not sustainable in 2028, how can you say in August 2023 that you've turned the corner? Unless you are saying it in a limited sense of the word, in comparison to the crisis period. If you are saying it in relation to the state of the overall economy, I beg to differ. Please, I hope I'm making sense to you. So that's the answer I'm giving. So the sense in which he's saying he's turned the corner is possibly because last year by this time, it was about to get very, very bad. But to all intents and purposes, looking at all the targets that we have readjusted, our growth targets have been reduced, our inflation target is higher than what we thought we would get. Our reserves by end of year sky is 0.8 month, not even a month of import cover. That's serious. So this is not an economy that has turned the corner by any stretch of the imagination. All right, let me just pack that. So that's my honest answer, unless you have another question, but that's my honest.
Yes, first one. Then explain this pension matter for us. What now there are two. We're told that there are two groups of debtors. So the first group is we have the international, and then the domestic. And the government says they are negotiating with pension funds as part of the debt exchange. Can you elaborate a bit?
Because
the unions had initially resisted this, from what I understand, and we've been told that TUC, for instance, are still adamant in the original position that this not be added to the conversation. That looks like.
So I have seen two documents. One is 57 pages, and then one is 6 pages. I haven't been briefed or haven't done an interview on them, so I don't have the details. Okay. And I also haven't spoken to industry people as to whether they will agree or not.
Well, the Daily Graphic reports that the Secretary General of the Trade Union Congress, Dr. Yaba, said the new proposal from the government to the Board of Trustees of Pension Funds to participate in a new alternative offer had not been accepted by the Labour Front. While the Labour Front has urged the trustees of the pension funds not to further engage the government on this new proposal, Dr. Ban said there were still deliberations among the various labour unions on the proposal.
Honestly speaking, we need more information.
Okay.
I got this late last night where they had a 57-page document saying that there's an alternative offer for pension funds. Okay. Now, the pension funds are private organizations that manage the pensions of workers. As you know, we have a 3-tier pension system. So part of your pension goes to the statutory SNIT. And then whether it's Petra or Axis or whoever, they have some of your money. Now that money is managed in a way that when you get to retirement age, they can start dispensing the money to you. So in many advanced countries, pension funds are used to do investment in long-term things that generate a steady return so that it can free up space to bring development and also guarantee. So they can use a pension fund to invest in certain kinds of projects, which will yield a return in maybe 30 years or whatever number of years. So you don't toy with anybody's pension fund in any country. In advanced countries, you can topple a government for messing with pension funds. All right. Now, the issue with our pension situation is that for a long time, only SNIT has been a pension fund. The private pension companies are not that old. It's about a decade since they started operations. And a lot of them were investing in government securities when they started. So, SNIT does many things now. SNIT will do flats, apartments, and things, basically to diversify their portfolio to make sure that the money is of good use, so that when you need your money, they'll pay you. Now, these private pension funds have not started making significant payments yet. Do you get my point? Because people started contributing less than 15 years ago. So they haven't yet gotten to a point where there will be pressure placed on them to make payments. So right now, it's still honeymoon period. They are investing, looking for where to put the money, so the money will be good. By the time you reach age 60, when you need your pension, the tier 2 and 3 guys will also have enough to add to what the tier 1 will give you. So it's a very delicate matter. And this is government, by law, asking us to pay this money. All right. Then they also give these pension funds the space to buy government instruments, right? And in fact, some of them, up to 85% of their investments are in government instruments. So if the government is in trouble and the government is now saying that, come for a debt exchange, that is serious, because the guy who did the investment decision for all of us, we didn't go to school that much. So if the guy has decided that we have given him a certain amount of money and that based on the calculation he has, this is the level of interest he needs so that your pension will be secure. If the government now comes and says, I'm in trouble, so I'm going to offer you a new interest, and a different tenor for your investment to mature. It's very serious. Yeah. So I think that the pension funds managers need to be talking to their customers and explaining their investment strategy to them, sending them reports regularly to tell them what I do with your money and what you expect to get when the money is due. All right. Well, the people who manage the funds have a responsibility to the people who put money in it. Right. So I think that the first person they should speak to is the person whose money they have, whether collectively or individually, to ask them. But the nature of these things is that because it's a collective, it's the same thing with the collective investment schemes. Because it's a collective, if you give your money to the company, they take collective decisions on your behalf. All right. So that is where the challenge is. Now, organized labor is able to speak with one voice because government workers' pensions are put in specific places. Yeah. So they can tell that our money has been touched, and they say don't touch it. But private people, I don't know. So what I need to find out is, this invitation is for 18 days, 18th August. Will the pension funds hold meetings with their clients before they decide to? Have they been meeting government prior to this offer? They need to tell us. We don't know. Because sometimes what happens is that they meet government and discuss favorable terms for which the money they've given the government should be paid. Because if the government says I can't pay, you can't really do anything. You can take the government to court, but they only pay when they have the money. So Sky is right when he says that these debt exchanges, even though they sound voluntary, they actually sound like they are forcing it, because you've gone to give money to a big person, government, and the government is saying, we don't have money to pay you at the time we promised, so we are going to pay you at a later date at a different interest. Now you can say, no, you sign an agreement with me, you have to pay me back, I'm going to go to court. Some people also calculate and say, well, what's the point in going to court? Let's see if we can negotiate terms that in the long run will still not be adverse to me and my clients. What this requires is transparency and trust, in my personal view. All right. So I think that, when the initial debt exchange happened, a lot of the financial institutions were not happy because they were taken off guard. So a lot of them, even though they didn't expressly individually come together, they issue statements collectively. You remember these companies, I forget the name, but they were companies issue statements.
Fund.
Yes. Now, I will be surprised if the pension funds say that they have not known that government has had its intention. You get, because the first exchange ended in February. So, and we are in August. So now government is saying, I'm giving you an offer. I am, what's the word I'm using? I'm deducing, or that it's very possible that these pension funds managers and government have been talking on the side, and this offer has been put on the table. We don't know if they will accept it publicly. We have to just watch the space. I haven't read the details of the offer, and I don't have the competence to tell whether it is better or worse, because these are things that the people who manage the pension funds do. But I think what individuals need to do is to ring their pension fund and say, Onupa, please, is my money okay? What are you planning to do? Are you going to hold a meeting to explain what you are going to do? Do you get me? Because if you've been paying, you are in compliance with the law, you have money with the pension fund, and the pension fund manager ought to speak to you before they do anything. That's my layman's answer. Again, I stand to be corrected. Good morning, Bernard. The white government finance minister is good at rhetoric, but unfortunately the economy hates mere talk. The last time he took us to that dangerous corner, the citizens suffered. I still eat once a day. This is Chris from Ashaliboche.
Timberland coming to you one more again. You see, people say that we changing, but I think it's the people.
A few more comments on the economy. Nathan, if you can read a couple for me.
Yes, George in Adenta says, Bernard, we've turned the economy, and the next day fuel prices are up. I see. This one says, the finance minister has turned the corner for himself and his government, but not for us, the ordinary Ghanaians. This one goes on to say, in this high inflation era, families have their life savings locked up in the financial cleanup since 2018. How do we survive? I can say for myself that I haven't reached the corner, not to even talk of turning. This is the reason why I feel justified for deciding not to vote again since 2016. These politicians don't have the interest of Ghanaians at heart. George from Airport City. Sami Ntema is asking, turned which corner? Don't forget, people in power always have their own world. He's definitely talking about their own corner and not that of the general population. Kweku says, Bernard and team, 20 billion cut in expenses by the government sounds big. Let's know the cut in percentages. That's what he's saying.
Well, it was 227 billion they initially wanted to spend, and now they've reduced it to 207. So that's about 20 billion. The deputy minister tells me most of it is in payment of interests as a result of the debt exchange. That's what she said, because goods and services has not been cut. And I think CapEx also suffered a bit.
Okay.
But according to her, it was interest payments that the savings were made because of the debt exchange. So essentially, it's monies they were to pay that they didn't pay because of the debt exchange.
All right. This one says, this whole 10 corner thing, was Ken not trying to say some nice things to make the economy look good in the eyes of the IMF? Jones from Tema is asking. And there's a question here. Bernard, is it mandatory for them to invest in government instruments? That was a question I wanted to ask you. I just wanted some clarity on whether or not it was true that these pension funds are supposed to invest.
So the word is not supposed to. They are allowed to.
They are allowed to.
The law allows them to do up to 80 in some cases.
Okay. So which means that they can decide not to.
Yes, it's not by force. Okay. And as we always say, diversification is the ultimate risk management. And I'm sure that in all our banks, in all our collective investment schemes, in all our investment companies, new notes are being written about risk management. So yes, the law allows you to, but not everybody did. I reviewed the financials of banks. You saw SG, the French bank. They were very conservative in how much money they lent to government. Maybe they know a thing or two about our government that we don't. And they didn't take as much a hit as other banks did. So if you look at SG Bank and their results, it's very clear that their risk management team took a different view to government when a lot of the banks felt, and of course, that brings me to the central bank, because the central bank has also taken a hit, right? The government has written off about 7 billion of the money it owes. So the question is, did the central bank give the money to government as part of a strategy? Well, based on the statements we've seen, they said the government was in need of money and they gave them money, they lend that money to the government. Now the government has written half of it off suo motu. Did they go through parliament? They did not. And we'll have to discuss this, because if you are supervising banks and telling them that they should adhere to the best risk management practices as a central bank, all right? So your bank supervisory department, you are saying that because of the systemic risk of the banking sector, you are not, if banks don't file their papers correctly and they don't adhere to sound financial management practices, you can sanction them. Now, if you, their supervisor, you lend, over 40 billion to a government, and if that's not bad enough, this was in a high inflation period, when you were telling us that the inflation was inflation which was cost-push inflation. You remember there was a time you were asking me about why the central banks keep raising the interest rates if it's not bringing inflation down. And I kept telling you that some of the inflation is imported because you are buying raw materials from abroad. So if your currency is going down, so it's the exchange rate, Bawumia. So the exchange rate, that's the issue. So if the exchange rate is going down because petroleum prices are out, there's no sense, in my view, in raising the interest rates as a central bank, because you are not US or you are not Japan, right? Your economy is dependent on imports. So a lot of your inflation, and the GSS has shown us that a lot of our inflation is imported. So you question the monetary prudence of just raising interest rate, crowding out investment, when you know that the inflation is not a monetary phenomenon. But at the same time, you were printing money and giving to this government, and the government is not going to pay. Do you get me? So could it be that even though you knew that inflation was a supply side issue, by your own actions in lending more money to the government, you increase money supply and worsen the inflation that you were saying you were trying to fight? You get me? So it is the report of the Bank of Ghana raises a lot of questions about its independence, its financial prudence, and then there are components of things. For example, how much it spends on compensations on goods and services and things, which seem high. All right. So if you are the one who is telling banks do this, that, or the other, and you yourself, so whilst a central bank does not exist to make profit, making a high loss
Doesn't
it undermines even the quality of the decisions you make and your own independence. Do you get my point? So it is a serious point that has come up. And I think that the Bank of Ghana's claim, in fact, if you read their report, they said that, the negative equity position is not a result of suboptimal policy decisions, but emanated from the restructuring of government debt and adverse market movements. So they are basically saying it's not our fault. It's because the finance minister is doing debt restructuring, and the money we lend to it, they've written part of it off. So we have taken a haircut. So, and the market is also not helping us. So basically, they are saying it's not our fault, and they are also saying that this negative equity does not imply loss of policy effectiveness. I beg to differ. I beg to differ because you are. You see, do you know why I beg to differ? Because when the inflation started, we all said in defense of the Bank of Ghana that it was the fiscal side that was driving the inflation, the supply side, not the monetary side, which was why we said stop raising the interest rate. You're just crowding out private sector from getting access to credit. Because there are two causes of inflation: too much money chasing too little goods, or prices going up because your inputs are expensive because you import them and the currency is falling. Now, if the latter is the cause of inflation, why are you raising interest rates? That's point number one. And now, at the same time you were doing that, you are giving the government money. You didn't go through Parliament. And this money is excess of the 5% of revenues that the law says you should give. Now, if you want to vary that, you didn't go to Parliament. Okay? So you knew that you were also giving the government money while you were trying to fight what you consider supply side inflation. But your own giving government money also pushed demand side inflation. Okay? So if you say and now you are in a negative equity position. So my point is that yet you are not there to make profit, but the loss exposes the flaw in what you did. Okay, then when you add that to some specific line items of how much money was spent on this or that or the other, it's very bad. You get me? Let me talk to somebody on the line. Then you can come back. Professor James Atapepra is the Dean of the School of Economics at UCC.
Oh, yeah.
We'll ask him his views about this matter. Prof, thanks for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, so I don't know if you've read the report of the Bank of Ghana, but it's generating a lot of questions where they have made a loss of about 60 billion cedis, an impairment of 48 billion from the debt exchange. And some people are saying that that is evidence of bad monetary management by the central bank. What should we make of the loss the central bank incurred in their 2022 annual report?
Good morning to all listeners, and good morning to you, the host of this program. I agree with the popular opinion that it's as a result of maybe bad policy. Yes, the laws, last 2021, BoG made a profit somewhere around 2.something billion, if I'm right. So why should you jump from a profit of 2.something billion all of a sudden to over 60 billion the following year? That tells you that something went wrong. Something drastically went wrong. Something. And a number of factors attribute to this huge loss. And one of them, the popular one, is the domestic debt exchange program. Government has borrowed money in terms of bonds from the public. Government has defaulted. And because BoG is the bank for the government, banker for the government, so if government is in trouble, BoG must step in to redeem the image of government. So that is number one. Number two is the monetary financing. that IMF has warned us not to do again. Monetary financing simply means that BoG, financing government activities from its balance sheet. And that's from the layman perspective. But it goes deeper, it goes beyond that. So, in terms of that, as a result of that, BoG's liability side exceeded the asset side. What it means is that if we are to sell BoG today, the quantum of the assets cannot be sold to pay off their liability. Point number 3 is the printing of money for government. I think many people have not, observed that. Anytime you're printing money printing comes at cost. Okay, so if you print money and the money goes into productive activities to raise revenue, that in finance they call that one seigniorage, raise revenue. Otherwise, you are going to incur loss. So printing money for government is also a factor that led to the huge loss that BoG is crying about today. You see, so you realize that I don't want to say that it is poor management or whatever. I have no facts. So I can't go there. But from an economist point of view, some of the policies were not, sound enough.
All right, so
important factor. Hold on. One other important factor that we can talk about is the cleanup exercise that BoG did. It cost BoG a lot. We did not only get money from outside the cleanup. BoG also spent in cleaning up during that cleanup exercise. Even though they claim that the banking sector is making some gains, there were a lot of loss there that could have also contributed to the quantum of loss that BoG has recorded on its balance sheet or financial statement.
I see. So the Bank of Ghana in the report said that their negative equity position was not the result of suboptimal policy decisions, but they blamed the debt restructuring and adverse market movements.
Debt restructuring is a policy issue.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So there's no point in that.
Are they trying to separate themselves from the fiscal managers of the economy by making this statement?
Of course, but let me tell you something. You can never separate Minister of Finance from the Bank of Ghana. You can never separate the activities of Minister of Finance from. So you can never run away from the fiscal defects. The Minister of Finance is the government cashier. And then the central bank governor is a custodian of government funds. So minister picks the phone and calls, Governor, we need this, and then you endorse it. You see, so they work hand in hand. So monetary policy alone doesn't work. Fiscal policy alone doesn't work. They work in tandem. They work together. So if monetary policy fails, we can link it up to fiscal policy. If fiscal policy fails, we can link it up to monetary policy. So if you talk about inflation is not just only about monetary policy issue. There are fiscal elements, fiscal components of inflation.
Yeah, which brings me to my next question. During the period of high inflation from last August to around November, the general view was that the central bank's decision to keep increasing their policy rate was not working because the particular kind of inflation we're suffering was supply-side inflation, particularly induced by exchange rate issues because we import our inputs. So a lot of people felt like the central bank's toolbox, and we know this from basic economics, open market operations, interest rates, and all those things. They were doing what they had to do, right? Yeah. But the challenge now is that it has now emerged that they lent so much money to the government, And the government last week now tells us that they are writing off half of that. So whilst we were defending the central bank, saying that it's the fiscal side that's destroying the inflation, now it has emerged that they were also lending money to the government, and it didn't necessarily even go through Parliament. So it was almost like both the fiscal and the monetary actions were further worsening the inflation that reached about 54%. So I'm not sure if the governor has questions to answer, or is the Monetary Policy Committee, by the nature of the way they work, who has questions to answer around the inflation we suffered, and now that it has emerged that they lent that amount of money to government without it going through Parliament?
The governor, the Monetary Policy Committee is chaired by the governor. The Monetary Policy Committee, the chairperson is Governor Addison. So if there's any question to answer, is the governor. I read in some, social media that the governor has been dragged to Parliament. I don't know how far that is true. Also to answer some questions. No member of the committee can answer a question apart from the governor. So he's responsible. So we see what the scenario that you created now is very funny. It's very, very funny. It means that our systems are not working as a country. It also means that our policies are not effective. It also means that the central bank independence has been thwarted, has been undermined for a long time. I always say that central bank is never independent in our part of this world. In Ghana, who appoints governor? The president appoints governor. If the president needs something, can governor say, I won't do it? That is why some payments were made without seeking parliamentary approval. That alone is an infraction. That alone is an infraction. It's a serious infraction. It's against the Constitution. I'm not a lawyer, but I know that there are constitutional provisions.
I remember when this issue came up, the governor or the bank wrote a statement saying that this was at the time that the economy would have collapsed if they had not made that payment to the financial side.
It doesn't matter. You still need parliamentary approval. At least it should go through some procedures, so that you will not be questioned why that payment was not approved. And it doesn't mean that if it should take a week to seek parliamentary approval, within that week Ghana will collapse. No, that is not true. The economy doesn't collapse like that.
So finally,
during financial crunch, the economy don't collapse within a week or two or a month. It goes through processes, and then we feel the final impact. The impact is not the shock. The shock is not sudden. It's not just a week, 2 or a month. It translates through so many macroeconomic variables before we feel the impact. So if the government says that if that had not been done, Ghana would have collapsed, the economy would have crashed, and I disagree with whoever made that statement. From the basic economics that I have learned, I disagree.
Okay. My final question is, because the central bank supervises banks, they have a bank supervision division, it appears to me like there is a psychological edge that they've also lost by making this loss. Because you are the one who is supervising banks and essentially trying to whip them in line. Now, by your own actions, you've incurred such a massive loss. And yes, we are told that they don't exist to make profit. But yes, a loss of this kind is a challenge. How do they redeem themselves from this situation that they are in?
You see, let me give you this Akan proverb. Efura or shekaba. You go to a farm, there's a village, there's a big farm, the owner himself is a man. And this man is wearing a makaba. Then the dress. What kind of dress will you expect them to wear?
Wow.
You see, so if the regulator couldn't make profit, couldn't post any profit, if the regulator is suffering, if the regulator itself is bleeding, what will happen to the people that they are regulating? What will happen to the institution that they are regulating? The fact of the matter is that banks are suffering. Banks are bleeding. For me, you see, in a financial system, a release of information is very, very critical, very crucial. I was of the opinion that this information shouldn't have come to the public. When I heard it, I said, no, this is a mistake. Because the moment this information is put into the public domain, it will send wrong signals. It will fear and panic to the public. Hey, they say BOG has made loss of this amount. Hey, if BOG has made loss of this amount, then what about the banks? The commercial banks, universal banks, the Robert banks. What is going to happen to the rural bank? What's going to happen to them? So it may have some negative effect on the banking sector. It is not every information that we put into the public domain. Yes, it could be true. The point is that what has happened is real. But it is not everything that is real that really should be communicated to people. It doesn't send good signal. So it means that if you cannot supervise yourself, how can you supervise somebody? If you cannot work on your own self, because you can't give what you don't have. You always give what you have. So, BOG today, I don't think we have the moral right to, attack any bank or to tell a bank that is consistently posting loss, that is consistently not being able to meet their liquidity position, that is consistently not being able to meet their capitalization. Because you, the regulator yourself, have a challenge. What are you coming to tell me?
Thank you.
This is a serious issue.
Thank you for your time, Professor James Atta Price, economist, Dean of School of Economics, UCC, speaking to us about the central bank and their losses. They have a loss of 60 billion, and there's also a negative equity position of 48 billion. We'll do another interview on this shortly, but your comments are welcome. 054-998-6996. Quick information, if you go into and this is in reference to the question, Nathan, you asked, the National Pension Regulatory Authority, there are guidelines for investment, because it was about the decisions of people who manage your pensions. If you go to paragraph or point 6, it talks about how much can be the investment limits, right? And it says, pension fund assets can be invested in bonds and other securities issued by the government of Ghana. A maximum of 30% of pension fund assets may be invested in local government securities. Up to 5% of pension fund assets can be invested in eligible bonds or debt instruments. And then maximum of 30% of corporate bonds may be invested in pension fund assets. So the maximum limit for pension funds is not 80, as originally suggested, it's 30. This is just by way of clarification. More comments coming in on the issue of the economy. We'll do another quick interview shortly, but you heard Prof. He says that Godfred, your question you're asking me has been answered. The gentleman I interviewed says that the head of the MPC is the governor and he should take responsibility. And he says that you cannot say that this is not a policy decision, that you chose to lend the money to the government. And that the challenge they have is because, according to Adongo, when Parliament invites them, they don't come. Or Parliament invites him, he doesn't come. If you wanted to assert your independence as a governor, I think the refuge will be Parliament. Sky, correct me if I'm wrong, because Parliament is there to be the check on executive.
Yes.
So if an institution like the BoG feels like the executive arm or the fiscal side is trying to dominate it, I think the accountability structures that Parliament puts in place could be a refuge.
Yes.
But if you are not in good terms or cooperating with Parliament, there's no way Parliament can defend you, right? Because if, for example, Sky was the governor and he's saying, look, we need you to pay 50 billion so we can pay our debts and stabilize the city. You can say, well, that's fine, but can you put it through a parliamentary system so that we'll get parliamentary approval, because we are going above the amount we can lend, because there's a certain amount you can lend. not more than 5% of the previous year's revenues. So if you're going to go above that 5%, and this is a law that is there, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, you say, okay, well, no problem. If Parliament will approve, Adelai, that we should go beyond that for emergency, and I'm sure Parliament has the power to do this, that we are going to give you the right to get this money at this time. Then you defend. But if you take the decision suo moto, and Parliament invites you and you don't show up, obviously it's a policy decision.
I like Professor Prepare a lot.
Yeah, that's what
he
he's
makes
trying to say.
economics easy.
Yeah.
He gave me an interesting example the last time I spoke to him. He said, and at the time, we were also discussing the Bank of Ghana. He said at the time, what had happened was the Ministry of Finance was behaving like a tap whose lock had broken and was dripping. And the Bank of Ghana was a mop that had to mop that water all the time at the time. Today, I take away what he says on if monetary outweighs policy, fiscal, there's a problem. If fiscal also overruns monetary, there's a problem. He spoke about the fact that there has to be a certain balance or cooperation between the two, right? My disappointment, and it's been going on for some time, has been with the ease with which at a point the Bank of Ghana seemed to have given up its place to the finance ministry. That is why some of the instances that you have spoken about, where it could have gone to Parliament and said, hey, I've tried my best to help within the confines of the law, but at the moment I'm being asked to do this. What do you think of it? Or should I do it? Or this did not happen. And here we are today, having a conversation about the Bank of Ghana and the position that it currently finds itself in, which is quite disappointing.
The truth is that independence hasn't really been asserted by
any BoG boss?
Probably, except Paul Akwa. I stand to be corrected. Probably except Paul Akwa, based on his own testimony. Let me do another interview. Let's talk to Dr. Edu Sarkodie, as economist, University of Ghana, just to pick his perspectives on this matter as well. Doc, thanks for joining us. Good morning. Doc, good morning. Dr. Edu Sarkodie, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Leonard.
Thank you so much. So, I'm zeroing in on the Bank of Ghana's financial report and the loss of 60 billion, 48 billion of impaired capital from the debt exchange. The Bank of Ghana is saying that their negative equity position was not the result of suboptimal policy decisions, but from the restructuring of government debt and adverse market movements. I spoke to Professor James Atta-Pepra, who disagrees. He says debt exchange is a policy decision, and the central bank, to the extent that it did not go to Parliament to seek approval to do this, has fallen on its own sword, and the governor should be blamed for this. What's your view?
Well, I think the central bank has a mandate. It's mandated to ensure price stability, to regulate the financial sector, and also influence GDP and employment. So has they delivered? Yes, they are delivering on this mandate. And so that's the policy, the monetary policy angle of managing the economy. And they have done work with that on that level. But the losses that they have made, is not as a result of undertaking these policies or these functions. The losses came from the fiscal side. And so it is because they were trying to bail out the fiscal. That's why they made those losses. It's not the same as saying that, the core mandate of the BoG in undertaking their core mandate led them into making these losses. So they have really specified what caused the losses. They've talked about the debt exchange program. They have also talked about the Citi depreciation, etc., etc. So I don't think that we have to blame entirely the BoG for undertaking their own functions and to incur these losses. They have undertaken their functions. and the DDE and other exchange rate losses have really, of course, it's part of their mandate. So wouldn't you say that they should take zero blame? They should not also take 100% blame. I think there's a percentage of the blame that the BoG
but if they are,
which is lower.
So you're saying that more of the blame should go to the fiscal side. So in a sense, you're saying we have fiscal dominance in Ghana.
Yes.
Is the monetary authority helpless in the face of fiscal dominance? Can it not, for example, use Parliament? Because the issue of lending to government financing, Bank of Ghana financing of government. There was a law about 5% of previous year's revenues. Those the buffers put in place to protect it from such fiscal dominance and to allow the finance ministry to borrow that amount, which is way above the 5% from you. You cannot say that they should not take the blame, can you?
Yeah. Let's take a look at the 5% financing, central bank financing. The government went beyond that because that point was suspended because of the COVID and then also for emergency situations. So it was suspended. And so, yes, if we have to then blame the government because you can't blame, I'm saying that 5% was suspended, okay? And so that's why the government was able to borrow more than 5% from the government. The other one is the independence, the operational independence. Normally when we talk about the independence of the central bank, largely we are talking about the operational independence. Of course, you know that the governor is appointed by the government, etc., etc. But what to do, how they do their things, they should be independent of it. And that operational independence too, I think is being attacked a little bit from the front of the central, because if the central bank says, I don't have money, the government may not, understand why you don't have money, etc., etc. So, to some extent, their independence is not there, and it's a worrying situation for any central governor.
The other thing that comes up is, I remember during the period of high inflation last year, you even gave an interview to The Conversation explaining some of the causes of the inflation. At the time, we understood the inflation was supply-side driven, which was why when they asked you why the interest rate increases were not working, you said that we have to disaggregate the causes of inflation. And that if the inflation is supply-side, particularly because the currency is falling, you are importing your inputs, it will drive inflation. So in raising the interest rate as a central bank, that tool is ineffective because the inflation is supply-side. Now, it is now emerging that the central bank did lend a lot of money to the government. So what I'm trying to say is that they also contributed to the oversupply of money. So in a very cynical way, whilst they were, and at the time we said the central bank cannot be blamed for inflation because it's a supply side issue. But now we found out that they were also printing money for the government, which was also demand side. So that's my point. So that they cannot hide under fiscal dominance because it's also a question of their own monetary decisions, is it not?
Yeah. The printing of the money or the financing or the fiscal dominance, as you mentioned, the financing of the budget deficit has also contributed to inflation. But if the government is asking you to finance its budget deficit, do you have the choice of saying yes or no? So I understand why the policy rate has consistently been increased, because they know exactly from their monetary side, they know exactly what they have done. And so they could not leave everything into the hands of, or they could not leave the cost of inflation strictly to the supply side, but also the demand side is also causing the inflation. So that's why consistently they've been increasing the policy rate to fight the inflation from their side and leaving the other side to be fought by the real sector. But I must also add that anytime the policy rate is being increased, it has two objectives. The first one is to fight inflation. The other one, many people don't talk about, is the nominal, to keep the nominal interest rate on government securities, so that investors do not leave, or investors do not sell government bonds, Because under the inflation targeting, anytime inflation rate goes up, the real interest rate on government securities, the real returns, it becomes negative or reduces. So in order to keep the nominal interest rate at the same level, you have to increase. In order to keep the real interest at the same level, you have to increase the nominal interest rate. So the policy rate increment is also one of the objectives, is to keep the real interest rate, at the same level by increasing the nominal interest rate, so that investors do not sell government securities. We saw that last year when the cedi was depreciating. In fact, part of the blame could be given to the foreign investors who were selling government bonds because of the inflation and other factors. So the government wanted to keep these investors, alive, or keep them, help them keep buying government bonds. So that's why they increased the nominal interest rate through the policy rate. So yes, when it comes to the monetary policy, I submit, and I think many economists share the same, idea, that the independence of the central bank is key. If 5%, it should be 5%. If you suspend the 5% and you go beyond it, then you're going to incur losses, as we have seen. And I have not read in any books the last time the Central Bank of Ghana incurred such losses. I have not read in any books. I'm yet to read. If somebody has that information, I'm yet to read. But this is huge, and we don't have to get here again as a country.
Thank you, Doc, for your time. That was Dr. Adu Sarko, the economist, University of Ghana, speaking to us. So the only difference between the two is that Prof. Atta thinks that the fiscal and the monetary together should be blamed. Doc Sarkodie thinks that we should sort of separate the two and let the fiscal side answer their fiscal, let the monetary side answer the monetary. But he says both must be blamed, but in different proportions. But both of them are saying that this is not an ordinary situation to have the level of losses we've had. Now, I heard the ranking member speak yesterday about this. Prior to this, he had spoken on Eyewitness News to Selom. This was like 2 weeks ago, where he said that they had invited the governor to come to finance committee and he hadn't showed up. My question is, from the way Parliament works, what tools do they have in getting, what's the word to use, in getting the BoG to comply with what they believe to be the right thing to do, right? What can they do?
Bernard, the central bank does not operate in vacuum. It operates on the basis of the provisions of our constitution and an act establishing it. And there are other, financial laws and regulations that basically regulate what they do. Now, before I make a further comment, let me point you in the direction of the provisions of the Constitution on the central bank. And the idea that is often bandied about that, the central bank is just independent in theory. No, the Constitution has given the authority to have the independence of mind and thought to act for and in the best interest of the people of Ghana. If you cannot assert that independence, then you are not fit for purpose. Because, Bernard, if you go to the Article 1A3 of the Constitution, the central bank is said to be clause 1. The Bank of Ghana shall be the central bank of Ghana and shall be the only authority to issue the currency of Ghana. Then 2 says the Bank of Ghana shall, A, promote and maintain the stability of the currency and direct and regulate the currency system in the interest, Bernard, in the interest of the economic progress of Ghana. That is a charge imposed on them by the Constitution. Then B says, the sole custodian of state funds of Ghana, both in and outside Ghana, and may, by notice published in the Gazette, authorize any other person or authority to act as a custodian of any such fund as may be specified in the notice. C says, encourage and promote economic development and the efficient utilization of the resources of Ghana through effective and efficient operation of a banking and credit system in Ghana. And D says, do all other things not inconsistent with this article or as may be prescribed by law. Now, if you go to clause 3, the Constitution says the governor of the Bank of Ghana shall, for the purposes of this article, disallow any transaction or transfer involving directly or indirectly any foreign exchange, whether in or outside Ghana, which is contrary to law. 4 says the following shall apply to the Bank of Ghana, and this is where we talk about his benefits and all other things and his appointment. It says he shall be appointed by the president acting in consultation with the Council of State for periods of 4 years each. So it is uninterrupted. You cannot interrupt it. Now it goes on to say, B, he shall, notwithstanding Article 285 of this Constitution, be the chairman of the governing body of the Bank of Ghana. So he is the policy head, right, running the institution. He is also made the chairman of the governing body. So,
but where is what I wanted to find out is there? Where is the independence clause?
That's what I'm taking. I'm reading all. It's a brief, provision, but I'm reading all of it so that you know exactly the job they are supposed to do. The final one, the C says, his emolument shall not be reduced while he continues to hold office as governor. So we pay them more. And then finally, he shall not be removed from office except on the same grounds and in the same manner as a justice of the Superior Court of Judicature, other than the Chief Justice, may be removed.
Okay.
So you see, the framers of the Constitution were able to see into the future that we will come to a point where the government of the day will want to rattle the central bank and its bosses into submission. And so they enshrined into this Constitution robust provisions as to protect the independence of the central bank boss. So you cannot just get up and say, oh, I don't like you, Mr. Addison. I want to remove you from office. There are stated procedures that you have to go through. So when people say...
but the question I wanted to clarify is, so what you've posted, you've spoken about their responsibility, and then you've spoken about security of tenure. Yesterday, we had a discussion about DACF and local government ministry. And we're talking about independence. All right. Now, maybe we should go to the Bank of Ghana Act, which you then operationalize. So what you've spoken about is what they are supposed to do. My question is, how are they supposed to do it? So what is the prescription by the Bank of Ghana Act in terms of how they conduct monetary policy? Must they keep an eye on the fiscal side? All right. So this is now a question of economics. I'm saying this because, you see, what you read is about their ultimate responsibility and the fact that they are protected like judges are protected. But the process, you see, I'm saying this because there's a school of thought, and this is an economist who said this. Because the economy is made up of two agents, right? So just hear me out before you come back to the law. The currency issuer and the currency users. The government of Ghana, through the Bank of Ghana, is the currency issuer, right? Nobody can issue currency except the BoG. The implication of standard accounting metrics like liquidity and solvency ratios on the currency issuer, being the Bank of Ghana, are not the same as the currency users, banks and other businesses. A central bank's mandate is not to make profits, thereby increasing its equity, right? So this is a reference to negative equity. If the BoG needs to operate under the negative equity to keep the economy stable and create fiscal space for growth and employment, so be it. Emphasis mine. This person says, if the BoG needs to operate under negative equity, which is the situation they have now, to keep the economy stable, which is what they claim they were doing, and create fiscal space for growth and employment, so be it. The central bank does not need to balance its books to meet its core mandate. This comment is in no way holding brief for the incompetence we have seen under this government. So let's separate the understanding of their mandate from collective blame for the state of the economy. So this school of thought is saying that if you look at their financials and say they've made a loss, and therefore that means that they are being poorly run, you may be making a mistake, because if the bank's decision to give government money can be proved to have been necessary to stabilize the economy, they can then, because don't forget, when you read the mandate, that's why I said if you go to the BoG Act, the stable prices, stable exchange rates, and stability, it can be, you can, if you sit before a judge and you say, I'm supposed to give you money, because if I don't give you the money, the economy will collapse. It may have to be a question of proof. Do you get me? So it's a nuanced discussion that I feel we need to approach from the basis of why did they give them money, and which is why I come up to the parliamentary approval. That whatever you say you want to do, if you go through Parliament, you are safe. But if you decide to do it on your own, because Parliament can then say, based on the way we assess the situation, this amount that government needs is not necessary. But if you on your own do it, then you are on your own.
Bernard.
But I feel like the point that this person is making should not be forgotten.
Bernard, you see, I have not discounted the provisions of the Bank of Ghana Act. As a matter of law, the Constitution is supreme. And it is only the ego of the Constitution that matters. No other ego matters. And no other law can contradict the Constitution. And where there is that inconsistency, that law will be struck down as unconstitutional. The Constitution has laid down a broad framework as to what the central bank should do. Now, on the basis,
But it didn't say, you see, Sky, I'm not bringing the Bank of Ghana Act to contradict the Constitution. I am saying that the Constitution tells us what they should do and how they are protected. And I'm saying that to make it rounded, you need to tell us how they are to do it. So that's why you can pass a bill and then you give the guidelines. So my point is that so don't misconstrue. I'm not saying that the BoG Act contradicts the Constitution. I am saying that what is the how? What is the how of how they're supposed to do what they do?
Okay, let me develop my point.
Yes.
The point I'm making is that in order to give effect to its mandate, in order to respect the tenets of the Constitution, what the framers intended, the BoG must run itself and the financial space that falls within their mandate to the glory of God. The question that I want you to answer is whether on the evidence that what we have of what we have seen over the past 7 or 8 years, or even 16 years, the central bank has been able to live up to its responsibility. First of all, before the 2016 elections, we saw massive indiscipline in the financial fiscal space of this country. There was the DKM scandal. People lost all kinds of money. I sat here in the chair that you were sitting in, called up a regulator at the central bank and put critical questions to him. At some point, he got angry that he was going to...
Head of banking supervision.
Exactly. I pinned him down because it was obvious that the central bank was not performing the task that it was
This
given.
was in relation to the 2017 financial crisis.
It must have been the day before it was surrounding the DKM matter.
So it was around and then also when the banks collapsed, I think you were asking a question about...
No, at that time I had left the jurisdiction.
So this was the... Also, preview 2016.
Yeah, that's
okay,
right,
then
that's
it's
right.
different.
You understand?
I remember this.
And it was obvious that the central bank was either acquiescing...
Yes, DKM.
Yeah, or was simply looking away and was not acting as to protect the interests of Ghanaians. Fast forward. Then we saw the gold for money scandal, or whatever you call it, the NAM11.
Yes,
Men's gold.
Exactly. The central bank sat down. All kinds of things were done. Statements were just issued left, right, and center, warning Ghanaians, don't do this, don't do that. But beyond that, no concrete action was taken as to protect Ghanaians in this country. The central bank sat down, and people lost millions of Ghana cedis as a result of that. We have heard reports of people harming themselves because of the losses that they had incurred in this country. Yet, nothing happened to anybody at the central bank. In which country do you sit down and operate like Chamberlain? You see no wrong, you do no wrong, you just see that the only time you act is to issue a statement complaining about one thing or the other. The mess still smells in front of you. Then the banking disaster happens. Reports go to the central bank all the time about how the various banks operate in this country. They are supposed to be the regulator. They are looking into the books. They are looking at the conduct of the various people managing the banks we have in this country. Yet our central bank and the people managing it sat at the high streets there, their offices there, watched the banking sector to go into a tailspin. a major crisis naturally undermined the economy of this country that we, the people of Ghana, are having to be called upon to pay for. Because how much did we spend on the banking sector crisis?
Losses that they incurred are like 3 times the amount, because they said they spent 20 billion. Now they lost about 3 times the amount they spent on the
some accounts said 20, others 20. So
so their loss is 60 billion. So,
yeah,
like
so that's about
the amount they spent.
So as a regulator who received consistent reports from the various banks, you sat down, you looked at this report, you gave money out to them to go and protect, to keep, I mean, all kinds of money were given to them, right?
It's called bank
liquidity support.
Yes.
So they kept pumping money because they received reports. Okay, so they will look at it. This bank, okay, so let's support. Our money, the people of this country. The lady who wakes up at 4 a.m. in the morning from Nsawam gets onto a trotro, giddy, comes to Accra, carry load under the scorching sun, goes to buy something and contributes something little to the public purse, hoping that Ghana would deliver its promise, that we are capable of managing our own affairs in a way that returns benefits for we, the citizens of this country. You sat there, watched these individuals, they messed up the economy of this country, and nothing happened to anybody at the central bank. We only closed down a number of banks, consolidated some, and then we were told that 20 billion Ghana cedis of our money was going to be spent to clean up the system. People lost jobs. People went home. Some people till today cannot pay for their medical bills. They are begging left, right, and center just to take care of themselves. You sat there. You said you have cleaned up the system. Fast forward last year. The same people in charge, the same people at the central bank, they were watching. The finance minister, they were flying in and out. Oh, we have gone to Eurobond, something. They came and did Wache party, or was it Kinke party?
It was both. It was Wache.
Wache and Kinke. We saw the photographs. People were celebrating at the Ministry of Finance. Oh, Ghana has recorded, massive win internationally. This is evidence that the market has confidence in Ghana.
Yes.
Years on, here we are. Yes. You and I, we have been struggling for the past 20-something years as journalists, earning very meager sums. And we try, through the toil that we have gone through, to contribute something small in investment instruments. This government,
haircut.
We told the people of this country that yet is a castle. By there will
be no haircut.
Ghana, these things were said in this country.
Yes.
That we are the saviors.
I tell you.
Will come and deliver this country.
Charlie.
Bernard, when I wanted to vote so badly, because I thought that what was happening under this guy, the format
was bad.
Was a shambles.
Charlie.
There was a need to correct it. When we went to the Electoral Commission, our names were messed up. I came on radio, I on Eyewitness News. I took on the Electoral Commission, insisted that they needed to correct it. They wanted to put us on the same day that voting was going to happen, so that we will not, police the process. We said it will not happen.
Vote on special voting.
We fought it until we were given the power of the vote.
Yes.
And we voted. Now, you come to government on the back of all of these fantastic promises you made.
Yeah.
See where you have sent the economy. You have robbed us of our money.
Yeah.
And now, the little investments that are sitting in coffers somewhere for our future. Bernard, you and I, you don't know what will happen to I don't know what will happen to you tomorrow, what will happen to me tomorrow. On a fine evening, I closed on Eyewitness News. I told my people that, good people of Ghana, God willing, same time tomorrow, I'll be back here with another exciting edition of Eyewitness News. I was on my way home. I had an accident.
Car came to whack your back.
I was crippled almost for a whole year.
2 years.
Not many people know that.
Yeah.
People sit in their houses, they talk anyhow by heart. Oh, he's gotten an appointment. That's why we can't hear him. I was nursing a crippling injury. Yeah. And throughout my years in the UK, I had to work on that.
Yes.
So the good people of this country have made various sacrifices, and people have made sacrifices far greater than I have made. And you sit at the central bank in the face of all the laws that you have fortifying your independence. All you do is to acquiesce to everything the central bank says.
The finance ministry.
That's right. The finance ministry says we must do. And you think that you need to continue your mandate there? No, Bernard, what am I asking for? I think that first of all, there has got to be a forensic audit into how come we came to make so much losses in excess of 60 billion Ghana cedis. We use, as you said, about half or less than half of that to clean up the financial system. People lost their banking licenses as a result of that. And Bernard, let me move forward. Look, if you look quickly at some of the...
So my question, I'm saying, so is Parliament the place to go?
I said first, there should be forensic audit.
By who?
Forensic audit, there are institutions that can sign. Of course, Parliament can also get involved, contract experts to do it. If you go to a publication that is on Ghana Web, for instance, we are told that the central bank spends quite a lot of money maintaining vehicles. For instance, the annual report of the bank tells us that 131,586 Ghana cedis was spent just to maintain vehicles as of December 2022. I mean, what kind of vehicles are they driving? How many vehicles are they driving in this country? Or how many bullion vans are they using to move money around the country as to lead us to pay 131,586 Ghana cedis just to get the vehicles at the Bank of Ghana?
Not bought, just maintained.
Maintain them. Maintenance.
They live in Frejabanos area.
Maintenance. 131 million Ghana cedis, Bernard.
Wow.
That's a lot of money for one fiscal year, if the report is to be believed.
Serious.
And then also that the cost of personnel at the central bank, 1.6 billion Ghana cedis. That's what we are talking about.
Wow.
And then if you go further down, we are told that what they spent for foreign and domestic travel, the central bank spent 97.4 million Ghana cedis. What plane are they flying?
In 1 year.
What plane are they flying in this country?
97 million.
97 million on foreign travel. Now, if you break that down, right, the question you should be asking is, who are traveling? On what kind of ticket are they traveling on? And what businesses are they going to do?
Where are they going?
So that you spent all of this money to travel outside the country with the hope that you will return positive returns for the good people of this country who are footing this bill.
Serious.
And yet, the economy is still in the mess we see. You spent over, 131 million Ghana cedis on vehicles. And many of these vehicles would include the comfortable ones that the bosses there drive. And yet, our economy is in this mess. The worker who has struggled for the past 60 years or so to earn a living at the end of the day, when he retires, he wants to go to Adafiano and sit by the seaside
and enjoy.
At the end of the month, he wants to go to ADB in Adafiano, collect something small as pension. You are saying now that you want to target his pension. Bernard, in which country should you allow this level of insensitivity to continue without challenging it? And you had the temerity to go back to Parliament and to inform them that, we are going, No, Bernard, we cannot allow this to continue.
Right.
There has got to be accountability. The Parliament would have to lead the way, and there must be forensic audits conducted as to how come these losses have been recorded.
In relation to the pension funds, so Nathan, just another one. So initially I said 75, then somebody sent. So apparently there are new investment guidelines.
Okay.
And these investment guidelines, a maximum of 75%, so I was right, of pension funds may be invested in government securities.
So it's still a determination that's made by the company.
Yes, it's maybe.
Yes.
Maybe.
Okay.
So, but the point is that if a pension fund manager has put 75% of your money into a government, and the government now wants to do
Yeah,
a debt
then-
exchange,
then
it's going to
that-
affect you.
yes.
So I think that point is very clear. All right, so watch this space is what I'll say. Parliament obviously is interested in this matter. We've heard from the minority. They say they'll start a debate today, and we are going to hear a lot more about what they will do in relation to not just the overall economy, but in particular the BoG report. So yesterday, Isaac Adongo spoke to the press, and he says we should watch this space. There's going to be some more information from Parliament on this matter.